if you really think that your violence will not be met with a greater force than Molin Labe.
The most important thing we can do for the people in Venezuela and the people in Cuba and the people everywhere who want to be free is build a revolutionary party and organization and movement in the United States that can fight and defeat U.S. imperialism. Because we are not a party that just analyzes what's going on. We're a party of activism. We believe that without action, without struggle, the idea of Marxist politics or socialist politics or progressive politics is in fact very empty and meaningless. We're not a discussion group. We're not discussing issues because they're interesting. We are discussing things because we want to go in to struggle against oppression. For the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which operates out of a Marxist framework and a revolutionary socialist framework, to answer the larger question that if it wasn't just oil, what made this war happen? Now, we're going to be in the streets in 2 weeks in front of the White House and around the country demonstrating, and some people are going to be demonstrating with us because they're against any war. They're against violence. They're against bloodshed. They would consider themselves nonviolent people and pacifists. And while we don't like violence, we are not pacifists. And in fact, we recognize that violence sometimes not only is necessary, but necessary for the liberation of human beings. For instance, the American Revolution happened. We have George Washington on our dollar bills, and he led an armed struggle against British colonialism. We were taught that that was a good thing, even though it was violent. In the case of this U.S. Civil War, the bloodiest war for the United States in its history, 650 or 700,000 people died in the U.S. Civil War. Well, the outcome of that war was the end of chattel slavery as a legal institution. That was a progressive outcome. The destruction of the system of slavery was a positive and progressive development. The fact that there had to be massive violence does not take away at all from the fact that it was a progressive development. So we, unlike pacifists, do not abhor violence so much that we could say that violence is never possible. If, for instance, in the South in the 50s and 60s and 40s, there was a divergence of opinion within the civil rights movement. When the KKK came in and spread terror throughout the black community in the South, there were two different currents. One was the current led by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and Dr. Martin Luther King, who bravely and heroically challenged and fought the racists, but under the philosophy of nonviolence. But there was another wing, led by Robert Williams and others, who armed the people and prepared the people to physically and with guns repudiate and defeat the KKK when it came in to terrorize the community. We do not have the opinion, from the point of view of our party, that nonviolence was the only solution, and that in fact people have a right to pick up the gun to defend themselves against terror and against brutality of that kind and against oppression. So, just to make it clear, our opposition to violence, or for instance in South Africa, the ANC, when it rose up against the racist apartheid state, people picked up the gun. They had their own army. It was a liberation army. Same in Angola, same in Mozambique, same in Guinea-Bissau. Those were armies for liberation. You couldn't cast off the apartheid system without an armed struggle. So, just to make it clear that our opposition to war isn't based on an abstract position of opposition to all manifestations of violence. It is not. So, we here, our party, Party for Socialism and Liberation, we're building a revolutionary party with one idea in mind. That the same phenomena that happened in Egypt will actually happen in the United States.
Fight back! The bosses say get back! Hey, fight back! The bosses say get back! We say fight back!
It's like, what was it that Jimmy Carter was saying? All the good stuff that's for people is done backed up by unions.
We say fight back! Rob says get back! We say fight back! Rob says get back! We say fight back! Workers yes, Wall Street no! Workers yes, Wall Street no! The greedy got to go! The greedy banks have got to go! Workers yes, Wall Street no! What do we do? Stand up, fight back!
PBN, for news that affects America. Join us on our live show at pushbacknow.com.